And good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for jumping on. My name is Zach Allison with ATS. I'm our National Accounts Manager and help engineering firms all across Canada and parts of the US these days as they get started on the ATS SpecTool. My market development team will help your firm set up your accounts, get your masters organized, and teach you how you can use the system. So if you run into any questions or issues on any of the products or want help getting started with the ATS SpecTool, please always feel free to reach out to me, Zach at atspec.com, and we'll do our best to assist you. One of the ways that we assist all the ATS supporters is by conducting, I think last year we had about 25 of these ATS University webinars. We provide a certificate of attendance for all those that need to use that for their self-reporting. We do also host some accredited AIU or ASPE-CEU sessions that, for the American audience or some of the architectural audiences that, have a little bit more stringent, guidelines for the presentations. We do host those as well. But today, luckily, we are going to be doing a deep dive, and it is going to be branded so we can actually get into some of the important topics that relate to specific products and examples. As with all of our sessions, we have everyone muted upon entry. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to prop them into the Q&A chat there. By the end of the week, you'll have your certificate of attendance sent out. And of course, if you want a deeper dive specific to the topic, please feel free to reach out to me. My team will help get this set up and do a firm-specific lunch and learn or something like that on the topic. So with me today, without any further ado, I'll introduce Jeremy Lawrence from the Mark Supply team, and really the First Co product expert and brand manager. First Co has been a partner with ATS for a year and a half, coming up on 2 years now. It was our first step into the HVAC world, and we're continuing to grow some of the offerings that are available on ATS SpecTool. What's great with a product like this is that there is a number of questions and options within a number of the product lines, and that ties in perfectly to the configurators that are available on ATS. So after the deep dive into the product, I'll show you how you can find the products that we discuss on the ATS SpecTool. I'll do a quick walkthrough. And of course, as always, if you need more detail, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks again for spending your time with us. I know time's always the most valuable thing. And I guess this is the first of many ATS universities. So thanks for joining me, Jeremy.
Of course. Thanks, Zach. We'll get started here. Oops. All right. So yeah, talking about the A2L transition, which, obviously at this point we're well into it, and we have a really solid understanding of the what's and what's required and when the timelines are. And for those of us who've been in the industry a while, we've been through this once before with the R-22 to 410A change. So we know a lot. And this one is going to be a lot easier, because when we switched from R-22 to 410A in the early 2000s, R-22 was ubiquitous. It was everywhere in our industry. And making that change to another refrigerant was a big shift, and there was a lot of moving parts. But we learned a lot over these last 20 years about how to do that. And 410A is not as prevalent as R-22. It is pretty limited to residential and light commercial HVAC systems. So and the refrigerants that we're switching to are also very similar refrigerants. They're both blends of R-32, and they use the same POE oil. So this wasn't a huge shift for our industry. As we get through this product presentation, you'll see there were certainly some concerns about leaks and refrigerant mitigation that was needed to be addressed by the manufacturers. But again, nothing too shocking. It was easy for them to follow along, and especially up here in Canada, the HRAI and Hardy in the States are invaluable associations to be a part of and to help lobby our governments to bring the industry in line with the way we need it to. So like Zach said, my name is Jeremy Lawrence. I'm the Sales Growth Manager in charge of commercial HVAC, hydronic, and technical support for Mark Supply. We are a HVAC, plumbing, and heating distributor in Ontario, Canada. And for our area, we are the primary stocking distributor of First Company. We are part of the Marcone group of companies as well. So depending on where you are, you're sure to find one of our Marcone groups in the area. And yeah, we've been partnered with SpecTool for about 18 months now. We've been live on the tool, and First Company has been a great addition. The way that the configurator works and how your usage is able to choose your selections, choose your types of heat, your types of pumps, and build your HVAC units the way you need to for your specific building, fits right in line with how the SpecTool works. So this presentation today is focused on those changes in regards to First Company, and some of the hurdles that they needed to jump through, and some of how this was a real opportunity for an HVAC manufacturer like First Company to expand their product offering and make sure that whatever refrigerant you're using today, we can accommodate, and we can help build your project effectively for now and the future. Because as of 2025, January 1st, 2025, there's a new standard that we need to meet for GWP, or global warming potential, but there's another one coming. We're going to be going through this again in 2028, and the restriction will come down a little bit further, and another shift will be made. But some refrigerants will stay. They've already met that next rating, and some will need to be adjusted. So First Company is a wide-reaching HVAC manufacturer. Their product is grouped into three categories: compressor-bearing units like PTAC units and split through-wall systems, air handlers, fan coils, and then commercial chilled water units. Obviously, commercial chilled water isn't what we're here to talk about today. We can, if you have any more questions about custom-built commercial chilled water, we can certainly, reach out to your ATS SpecTool rep, and they can get us in touch to provide that. So as of the January 1st, all First Company units with compressors have transitioned to 454B refrigerant. A few different reasons we went with R-454B, but the biggest among them is that this refrigerant meets the standard that's coming in 2028. The two main refrigerants that are being used in the industry as of today are R-32 and R-454B. A lot of the Asian manufacturers are using R-32. There's good reason for that as well. R-32, the way, so it was created by Daikin, and it was built to be a ductless type system. And so it has superior performance in a ductless or a mini split type product, but it does have a slightly higher GWP, so they will have to shift away from it in 2028. So North American manufacturers, by and large, went to 454B, and these PTAC and split units are no different. So the PTAC units that they offer that we'll cover today are the Eco Series. These are ducted central heat pumps that can provide heating and cooling for an entire space. They range from 3/4 ton up to 2.5 ton. They come in hydronic heat, electric, low ambient heat pump with an electric backup, and also the fresh pack units that come in the same types of heat, but also have that integral ERV, which is obviously, it's been a real game changer for us in the industry. Having an all-in-one packaged unit has transformed these buildings, and the way that First Company builds their ERV PTAC system is that sleeve that the unit sits in, they actually duct their ERV right down into the sleeve. So we're saving 2 intake and exhaust wall penetrations and using the condenser fan to help fresh air for the ERV. There's also the brand new First Pack Series PTACs. They are a lower profile unit, more similar to Napoleon's Condo Pack or the Magic Pack units. They come in hydronic, electric, low ambient heat pump as well, and they have a high efficiency gas version too. Then we'll quickly go over the Split Series, which are through the wall condensers. So they are built into the wall and use outside air as a normal split air conditioning or heat pump condenser does. And they're both high efficiency rated at this point. outside of compressor bearing, First Company's primary business is air handlers and fan coils. They build a vast array and set of configurations for air handlers and fan coils. And because of this, they couldn't stay with one refrigerant. They decided to be an all-in-one solution and take this opportunity of the refrigerant transition to make a switch so that they can fill the need of any job that their contractors, engineers are working on at that time. So their product line has now tripled in the air handlers and fan coil space. In fact, quadrupled, because we are able to provide the exact same units set up for 454B, set up for R-32. We can continue to get R-410A systems as well. They do come labeled from the factory for servicing a replacement only. And they've also created a Z model, which is their universal. As a stocking distributor, this was a dream, right? I can now bring in a universal unit and keep sensor kits in stock so that if a replacement comes up, I just have to hand them the right sensor kit and I can service all these units without having to quadruple my inventory. As a engineer, architect point of view, we have the ability to meet whatever refrigerant you need on that space. So as part of the configurator, the refrigerant choice will be a selection that you'll be able to use. And of course, chilled water is included in there as well. So the multi-occupant fan coil units, a lot of these will be very familiar, right? First Company designed the original specs for most of these units, and they've been either rebranded to something else or copied by other manufacturers over the last 40 years. But each of these units comes in a wide array of heating, cooling, ECM fans, pump built in, the list goes on and on. The other, besides being able to expand out what refrigerant types were offered, this was also an opportunity to readjust their model numbers to better reflect what the unit actually is and what factory options are available. So pre-A2L, 18HX5. That was a pretty that was a common model number that we would see, and it breaks down as simply as 18,000 BTUs of cooling. HX is an electric ceiling mounted unit, and 5 is 5 kilowatts of electric heat. You've got your cooling, you've got your configuration, and you've got your heating information. That's all that was given to us. With this opportunity to rebuild our model numbers, they did an excellent job of building out these model numbers in a coherent way that now we can tell exactly what we have the option of building. So unit size, series, heat option. So in the current one, this one be a 10 kilowatts X13 ECM motor. It's a 240 volt unit. It's a cased ceiling mounted unit. A is 410A. B is R-454B, C is R-32, and Z is universal. V is a metering device. We would either have TXV or P for a piston orifice. And then these next three digits are really the key for us, especially in engineering, because one problem that First Company had prior to the A2L transition was this 18HX5 unit could have a freeze protector in it. It could have other controls built into it that aren't reflected in this basic model number. That was a difficult thing for us to get around, because we would, in our price book, we would see this model number repeated 3 or 4 times, each with different unlisted accessories, but at 4 or 5 different prices. So we're really excited about this new model number breakdown. It makes it much easier to follow and much easier to design the units that we want to see. So we've got control options, we've got sensors and switches, and an optional stainless steel drain pan if required. And these 2 digits, like I said, refrigerant broken out, and then what type of metering device. So we can pick and choose how we want this unit to be built. And again, we see this third line here was the last we would see in previously, and for these HX series units, now having this full line of options and being able to choose how this unit is built is what we were certainly hoping that they would do. This is how they run their commercial chilled water side. This is all getting loaded into the SpecTool right now. Because it was a huge change and quadrupled the product offering, it's taken us a little bit of time to get it all loaded into SpecTool and get the Revit documents in place and all the specifications and the all the tools that you need to build this into your job. In the spec sheets, of course, all our performance data is broken out and physical dimensions with all options available. I wanted to highlight this slide especially because the HX units are electric heat and refrigerant cooling or heating. What they've done is they've removed the base standard efficiency in their evaporators. Because of the move towards more heat pumps, we do need more space and volume in the coils. So they've only given us increased volume and efficiency in the new HX series units. 28, 32, 37,000 BTUs. Of course, especially with the TSV systems, a 28 is a high efficiency 2-ton, 32 is a high efficiency 2.5, and our 37 is a high efficiency 3-ton. Again, with all of our performance data broken out. Next, exact same model, ceiling mounted, but this version is a hot water. So this long convoluted model number of 25CDXQXBR-CW/TXV. This is what we used to have to deal with, and trying to train people what this X means compared to what this X means was a nightmare. This X actually doesn't mean anything. Now it does. So in our new system, 2-ton CDX is the ceiling mounted version. It's all broken out here. Q is a pump with a 2-row hot water coil, ECM fan, 120 volts, ceiling mounted. We've got our refrigerant and then pump controls, freeze sensors, and of course a drain pan.
This
all
is
broken
why
out.
we love the ATS SpecTool to help us with configurations.
Yes. And now, like, rebuilding that file to load in is so much easier. The amount of nonsense I had to go through the first time saying, well, this X is here, but now it's over here. Q means this. It doesn't mean that on a different unit. But now this is exactly, these units and these model numbers are built for the SpecTool. Yeah. And it's going to be really easy to use.
Question coming in, I guess more of a comment or just trying to understand some of the premise. They just want to understand if we're going to be going into, I guess, maybe just Canadian or both Canadian and the US regulatory requirements that kind of came to lead to these refrigerants.
So that wasn't planned specifically for this. So that is kind of what we had talked about, Zach. We can certainly do that. And I mean, that's one that I run pretty often. It's not specific to, obviously it's more regulatory in industry knowledge. So it's not specific to the SpecTool or the product that's on the SpecTool. But the thing, I mean, to specifically address that question, it is very simple. This is a US Department of Energy driven policy. Nowhere else in the world is it being adopted. We're going along with it, as we did with the previous refrigerant change, but up in Canada, really nothing's actually changed, right? We still get a lot of units from China, and we, as a distributor, continue to get 410 units from China directly that aren't affected by this at all. There is an understanding that when the US shifts away from 410A, the refrigerant manufacturers are going to make less of it, which will then drive the price up. And that is what happened with the R-22 transition, is when the price of the refrigerant itself went up because of lack of demand. That is what dictated the transition date over to 410A. So in the US, you were limited to R-454B or R-32 refrigerants. Those are the only two A2L standard refrigerants that are being used in residential and light commercial HVAC. In Canada, we are free to use R-410A still, but we're not going to get any of those units from US manufacturers.
And then a couple other questions that we can just kind of bop over really quick here.
Sure.
In terms of, sharing the slides, I guess you can send me a PDF of it and we'll be able to send it out. If anyone wants a copy of the slide deck, we can share that out. Just shoot me an email, zach@atspec.com. However, I'll also mention that the recorded session will be live at atspec.com, and I'll show you how you can find the recorded webinar section. So you can always come back and not just review the slides, but hear Jeremy's wonderful insight. And then we got another question, or I guess comment. Bring back the 12 kilowatt option for the fan coils. I'll add, please.
So that has been, and not necessarily just 12. Whenever a manufacturer changes an option that was in a previous spec sheet, it's frustrating, and we have that happens with all manufacturers. I did have a project a few years ago where the engineer said, I need 4 kilowatts of heat for this space, and the manufacturer in that case made a 3 and a 5, and so we had to go to 5. It wasn't properly communicated back to the engineer, and then by the time the contractor came to it, they ended up having to pay to rewire the building. So it's frustrating. 12 is in one of those midpoints, right? If 10, once you get into those larger kilowatts, they do make bigger jumps, right? There's 10, 15, 20 typically, but they're all banked, right? So typically they're on a 5 kilowatt bank. So if you had a 12, you'd get a 552. A 15 is 555. So if you really needed those last 2 kilowatts of heat, the 15, if the ductwork, as long as it doesn't affect the duct capacity and the CFM requirements, the 15 shouldn't have. So there's 2 ways to do that. The 15 would be appropriate, but also if the unit is operating on 208, 230 volt instead of 240 volt, a real 240 volt, then it gets derated by about 15%. So that 15 becomes around a 12 at 208, 230. Great question, though. That is something that comes up pretty commonly. So another very common unit, these units are built right into the wall. There's an access panel that covers this filter access. So all you would see in the finished space is a nice painted metal access panel. And again, from this 1.5 ton UC closet unit, 3 kilowatts, to breaking out a full model number gives us a lot more of these options. And with First Company, each one of the models that I've shown you so far can be duplicated in hot water, chilled water only. This one is the HBX units are some of the most common units around, whether from First Company or from competitive manufacturers. This standard bottom return 20-inch by 20-inch by 40 cabinet is, everywhere. It has been used for the last 30 years in many different applications, and you can see across the top here there are so many versions of this unit we used to deal with. Each one of these is a completely different type, with a pump, without a pump, variable speed ECM, non-variable speed ECM motors. Now it's all broken out into these easy to follow model numbers. And these ones especially, the freeze stat, float switches, combinations, coil sensors, and time delays on both the compressor and pump. And then there's also, they've even gone to the point of if you add a pump, there is our pumps are high flow pumps. If you're working with either a combi boiler or a tankless water heater, we do need a bit more gallons per minute to get the right amount of heat out of there. And then of course, if you're working with a central pump or central heating system, we don't need that individual pump, and just the hot water coil is good enough. And we're sized for different heat values there as well. Compact version. Once we get down to these compacts, this is again, it's electric heat. It can be hydronic. It can be heat pump. Once we compact down to this, there's one more step, right? We need to see left hand or right hand return, so that when you're looking at this unit straight on, does the return come in from the left hand, right hand side? Because that's the side that the evaporator gets installed on. Back, especially in Canada, there are a huge number of the predecessor of this unit installed, and we were able to, at that point, sell the evaporator coil as an added accessory, and the contractor on site could decide whether it was in the left or right hand based on their need on that day. The way that AHRI ratings have gone, and the specificity that's required, they have to be tested individually, and that means ordering either left or right hand units. This is one of those things that we check and double check before ordering the equipment to make sure that we're getting all the right things and there's no hiccups in the project. This is a breakdown of those units. So our PTACs, these are the most unique of the products, where the last group of fan coils and air handlers are very ubiquitous. They're everywhere in the industry. These are very specific to First Company. They've been very successful over the last 30 years, and we do a ton of replacements on them as well as new projects. So the Eco Series unit can come as a cooling with electric heat, hydronic, or the fresh pack unit that has the built-in ERV. And again, going from an SPX, there's so many in retrofit. We've dealt with SPUs, SPX Rs, SPX As, Bs, Cs, and now we're finally into this full proper model number to give best description of what this unit is. So this specific model number breakout is a heat pump. It's got with electric heat backup, 3/4 to 2.5 ton sizes, ducted. They can do up to 10 kilowatts of electric heat for this model. And these units, like I said at the beginning, compressor bearing, they are only R-454B, and they're all built internally. There are third-party options for coil sensors and things like that. The hot water coil sits on the very top of the unit. It is very far away from the evaporator, so it is unlikely to require a freeze stat or something like that. The real advantage to these PTACs is, as you can see, these are packaged units. And there is, to the previous person's question, one of the regulatory changes or adaptations that they needed to make was, we've allowed A2L products are flammable, barely, but they are flammable. But in our homes, our refrigerators, our freezers are often filled with propane, which isn't mildly flammable. It is very flammable and explosive. So why have we been able to use that, but now suddenly using a mildly flammable refrigerant is caused such a problem? And that it comes down to factory testing versus installing in someone's home as a split unit. These PTAC units are factory built, factory charged, and tested under factory conditions. And there's a carve out within the new A2L transition where if the packaged unit is charged, tested in the factory, and has less than 3.4 pounds of refrigerant, it doesn't require a refrigeration mitigation system. It doesn't need the sensor. It doesn't need the circuit board. It doesn't require it because the space required in the home or building is large enough that even if we lost the entire charge, it could never reach the level of low flammability. So there is a carve out in there that not all these units need those flammability sensors. 3.4 pounds is the rule of thumb on those, and that goes for packaged HVAC units as well. First pack, this is this is one of their newer products. So the structure was actually correct from get-go. It comes in electric heat, low ambient heat pump, and the high efficiency gas model, and broken out, very easy to follow. These units are competitive to Magic Pack from us, like they are the same dimensions and by and large the same performance value, certainly at a much better price. Through the wall, these ones haven't been as popular in the last, they've dropped off kind of in the last 5 years because they like the PTACs, you need an outside wall, and then the slide carries the weight of the unit, or the sleeve carries the weight of the unit, and the condenser is facing outwards of the building and exchanging that air for the condenser, the air conditioner heat pump. When you give up that outside wall space for a closet to put your HVAC unit in, these types of units have come out of fashion because you'd be giving up space on the outside wall for this, and maybe you put the ERV above it. That's a good use of space as well. But then you also need somewhere else, another closet to put your air handler. So we've lost, I know there are, the ceiling mounted units are a great option to put over the laundry if you've got in-suite laundry. So these are a very good use in certain applications, but realistically, when an engineer or an architect has to give up an outside closet space, why not go with that PTAC that has heat and cooling all built into one, factory built, ERV, and all packaged into one, right? If we're going to give up square footage, let's get it all done in the least square footage as possible. And that's certainly the way it's shifted recently. But these are available, high efficiency heat pump and the split cooling as well.
Just one question coming in here. Specifically for cold climates, what are the best heat pump options? Or are there any cold climate heat pump options?
So from the standpoint of cold climate has kind of gotten a new definition in the last couple of years because of the rebates. And there is, especially with the way the first company manufactures, they're taking up a space in the outside wall with their sleeve. If we needed to get up to 18 SEER or 8.5 HSPF to hit rebates, as they're defined these days, the amount of wall space we would need to take to get that much air volume through it would be massive, right? We aren't going to hit rebate level of efficiency, but we are going to use the smallest amount of space, square footage in the building at the standard efficiency required. And now all these PTAC units, they fall into a special classification called space constrained vertical. It was a carve out that was created when SEER 2 came out in 2023, because when you're using wall, like a sleeve and fixed wall space like this, we're limited to the amount of coil volume we can have. And instead of ending the ability to use these products, there's a tremendous amount of value in these products, and the building industry saw that and created a special carve out where we are meeting. Okay, we're 12. I think they're 12 SEER, 11 EER. We've got it, obviously tons of information on the website, but we're not going to be able to advance as fast as a mini split system or a full VRF system, a variable refrigerant flow system like what Mitsubishi, Daikin, or LG is using. We're never going to hit that level of efficiency, but we offer a in-suite, all-in-one HVAC and ventilation unit that can be individually monitored or billed to the homeowner in a condo situation. And so we've got our own space constrained vertical rating that is used, and it allows for very tight closets. So it's only about 3 inches on all sides. I think 6 inches on the front, but 3 inches on the sides. And then there's an access panel required to get at the unit to service it. But these closets are tight, and these units are meant to be worked on from all sides. it's very easy to remove them if you ever need to actually get in there to replace a compressor or something like that. Very, very easy to work on from all sides.
And one other question that came up here, not really related specific to the PTACs or I guess the air handlers that we're talking about earlier, but are there any new or additional design considerations that need to be considered when using these A2L class refrigerants?
But no, not that I'm aware of. They have done a good job of putting the onus on the HVAC manufacturers to take all this into account. And they all, depending on the specialty, they all have to play their part, right? If somebody's building a packaged unit that has the evaporator, the condenser all in one, then they need to make sure that that's compliant. As for from a building standpoint, no, not that I'm aware of. There's no requirement for sprinkling these units. There's no extra requirement for ventilation. Like the way these, if a leak was ever discovered, the unit is designed to turn the compressor off. Any other potential spark hazards that are in the airstream are to be wired in and turned off, and then the blower fan in the unit keeps going to dissipate that refrigerant. It would be a good idea if I would certainly reach out to Zach if there's any if you'd like a deep dive into this refrigerant transition, especially from the viewpoint of a contractor, what's expected of them, and just the basics of how flammable are these refrigerants, what's the safety precautions. I do a lot of work with contractors on that, and we can certainly run that program to this audience. There's a lot of good information there, but it's nothing that affects the building envelope specifically. There was issues from a distributor point of view. There were issues about storage because our air conditioning condensers, there was a potential that our air conditioning condensers sitting in our warehouse could be looked at like acetylene tanks because we buy them pre-charged from the factory, and they are storage bottles for this refrigerant. And if the refrigerant is flammable, then they would need to be treated that way. Luckily, Canadian Building Code was changed to adopt a better view of what the A2L refrigerants actually are, and we don't have additional restrictions. There's a restriction on how many units we can store in the building, but it's like 5,000 units per building. So, and doubles if the building is sprinklered. So no, other than that, from a building point of view, there wasn't any major changes that I'm aware of. I know we do want to get to a walk through the SpecTool. So very quickly, the water source heat pumps are becoming very, very popular. And First Company does make multiple variations with multiple different built-in options and heat exchangers, vertical and horizontal systems. These ones are again new and have adopted the new nomenclature right out of the gate. Lots of website updates. They're all the information you could ever need when you want to dig down and find some stuff that's directly. All this stuff, all of the important information will be loaded on the SpecTool along with the unit. So when you build a unit in Configurator, it will pop up the documents specific to that unit. And Revit files, install operation manuals, and all the new A2L specifications for these units can be found on the website as well.
Perfect. And just
That's it
circling back to that last question, there was an additional follow-up. Are there any requirements for using these A2L refrigerants inside boiler rooms?
So no, not that I'm aware of, because the units themselves have mitigation systems in them. If so, I'm certainly not aware of any, but I could see a value in interlocking the systems in to turn off if there was a leak found. But especially nowadays with the we're certainly not building any buildings that are pulling intake combustion air from the room. So it would be very unlikely to run into one of these situations. even if there was, yeah, the boiler's not going to cause a flame situation. These refrigerants are extremely difficult to ignite. R-32 off the top of my head is about 30 times more difficult to, it takes 30 times more ignition energy than propane to ignite. And 454B, it's over 100 times more ignition energy than propane. Very, very difficult. And then once they do ignite, their burn rate is extremely slow. 454B burns at 2 inches per second. Like you can just get up and walk away. Yeah, very difficult.
And then just one final
Great.
question here before we transition over to the SpecTool. Do you manufacture any low profile units? Or would those be more like the ceiling mounted? Is that what we would really consider a lower profile?
Yeah, so they are certainly the lowest profile units. There are there's 2 other types in the commercial chilled water application that are low profile as well. They are, I mean, you could certainly use, there's nothing stopping you from using them like on a floor surface as long as they're protected, but they come from the factory ready to be ceiling mounted. If that's what the question was around, then yes. There's also in the chilled water side, there are floor consoles and wall console units that disappear right into the wall, that 2-pipe, 4-pipe hot water, chilled water with ECM fans. It's a whole, that whole other product line. But yeah, we just about anything that can be built for air handlers and fan coils, first company does it.
Perfect. And I did just launch a poll if people have a second to finish that off as we pull up the SpecTool here. I'll close that off. So yeah, if this is your first time joining HCS University, thanks again for taking a shot and joining us. ATS is a product selection company, or at least the SpecTool portion of it is. If you go to atspec.com, it's all free for engineers, contractors, design build, architects, and interior designers. They can all create an account or log in with your account. One thing I did want to highlight, and I put it into the chat there, if you go to the architects and engineers drop down, the Learning Hub tab, you can go to the webinar recordings, and you'll find all the previous webinars. And we did a great deep dive into specifically PTAC units back in October. So that'd certainly be worth going back and taking a look if this is of interest to you. And of course, if any of these recordings, any of these webinars draw interest to you, please feel free to reach out to me. And of course, we'll help set up a lunch and learn or answer any additional questions that you may have. Once you are logged in, this is what we call our dashboard. You have your quick actions tabs here where you can create a project, a quick spec, a master, as well as view all of the kind of folder housings of those. In essence, your ATS account is going to be aligned within your firm. So let's say you're Stantec or WSP, Smith & Anderson, whoever. You have multiple offices. Each of those offices may have a locational office account where you and your team members are able to create projects and share them back and forth. And then you'll also have the larger multi-office account that, of course, you can share back and forth on. And I know a couple of people from some of those firms just reached out to me. They've got some new employees starting up. So basically, I will help them get logged in, set up on the system. I'll do one-on-one overviews with them and teach them, what we're going to cover now. So those same projects, quick specs, and masters, basically you are going to start by creating a folder. The folder could be a detailed one like a master where you have repeat work. Think if you have a condo owner group that you're working with regularly and you're going to have multiple locations, it's great to build a master that's going to have their preferred standards. This could be their faucets, their preferred water heaters, their preferred, maybe they prefer the PTAC units where another owner prefers the through the wall units that we were talking about. That would allow you to very quickly go from a master to a project or a quick spec, which would be unique to a specific project. So basically, you're just going to create a folder. If we create a quick spec, it's just a simple title. We could call it PTAC, or we could create a project where you're going to put in, project 123, address XYZ, whatever you want to call it. Your internal project name and number is great. Put in your location, and this is going to help us apply the appropriate building code. So we actually have a presentation next month on the updates to the BC building code. There's updates to Alberta, Ontario over the last year. So all those codes are going to align our rule engine so that we are recommending and suggesting the correct product. By selecting your application, you get a similar recommendation. All of these can be accessed here on the side. So you got your projects, your masters, quick specs, and of course what we call ATS templates, which is our versions of those masters. So just like I mentioned how you can create your own condo master, we have a ATS condo master, which you could use to quickly create your product. So you can see I've created this First Go Condo webinar example project. This is all of the demo projects that we've worked on. So if we go into here, you can see I've already made a selection. We've got our PTAC unit here. If I want to edit the selection, I can click on it, hit the little pencil button. If I want to add more, I can go to the Add Drawing button here on the left and hit Create New Drawing. Here you can see we've got all these different categories that are available within ATS. One thing I saw in the poll, there's all sorts of different divisions that some people specialize in. So you can pin the products that mean the most to you. So you can see I've already got PTAC and air handlers pinned here. Let's say I also do some water heaters. I could pin my favorite water heater and go into that selection. I can search by air, find our PTAC air conditioners or our air handlers and fan coils. So if we jump into the PTAC area, you can see that Eco series that Jeremy discussed, where again, we've got our configurator. So this is really what we were talking about, why ATS aligns perfectly with a product like this. There's a number of these options that as we make selections are going to disappear because they're not appropriate to select anymore. So if I go with our fresh pack with the integral ERV, the efficiency gas is no longer available. If I select, let's say, electric heat, now we're losing some of our other options. Let's select a 1.0 on this one. What do you think, Jeremy? Like a 3 kilowatt?
Yeah, that's very common for a size like that.
And then it updates that model number to show, like Jeremy discussed, all of these selections are affecting our model number as we go. This is going to give us a configured and specific output spec, which could be written spec in Word. We have 3 different formats of Word specs, fixture schedules in Excel, manufacturer specs in PDF, submittal specs in PDF, versus just going to the manufacturer's website, getting this generic, manufacturer spec sheet, which is great, has a ton of detail, but it's not configured to your specific selection. That's what ATS has. And of course, the manufacturer spec sheet is also available right there. So if I hit add product, that's going to put the product I've selected into that project folder that I've, started. And then I can go back to add next drawing, take me back to the category page. I can go here back to project, and I'll show you the other way that you can add product as well. We mentioned having your masters and templates. If you have a specific condo owner or a chain of restaurants or a chain of whatever you're working on, you got 10, 20 of these to build this year. We go to add drawings for masters and templates, pops up our lovely quick access drawer here, where that same condo amenity space master that I mentioned and showed previously is available here. So if I need to round out the selection, maybe I'm doing more than just the PTAC unit. We're doing an amenity bar area in our condo. We want a high-end lab with a soap behind the mirror. Maybe we want a universal lab as well, toilet. And then, of course, our air handler unit, floor drains, access doors, whatever it is you need. We can check the boxes next to it. This is all from our pre-approved, reviewed, confirmed, accurate product. Just drag and drop and pop them into your selection. This is by far the fastest way to utilize the spec system. It takes a little bit of time to get your masters set up, so how they work for you and your firm to set your preferences. But once they're in, it's just a drag and drop, and then we can check a box and download. This is where my team really comes in. If you need help getting your masters set up, please reach out to me. My team and our spec team will work with you to help make sure that your masters are set to your preferences. And then you can just drag and drop and download into your individual projects, where you can get your Revit files, your CSI 3-part spec, short spec, product brochures, submittals, all going to be available for you to download. And then you can take this and put it into your own written documentation. So I did see, I don't know if that poll's still going. I'll try to end the poll, but question coming in. No questions yet, but so we'll download the long spec here. You can download either a zip file or it'll pull up, each file individually. And again, this will be all configured to your specific model name and number with the information updated from the manufacturer. Everything's open and editable, so you could grab this and grab as much or as little as you want and put it into your own documentation. I know there's lots of different methods that different engineering firms are using to go to market these days. We've had people that just copy our written information and put it into your own internal written, standards. We have people that download the submittal page and put it directly onto their drawings and have a generic written spec. If you are looking for a schedule in Excel, we have different tabs and columns that align to the different product types. The pump column headers need to be different than the air handler column headers, which are different than your fixtures or your drainage. So you'll get different tabs for each of those. And of course, everything's kept as up to date as we can be. As soon as the manufacturer notifies us, hey, there's a change to this model number or a change to this data, our data team gets to making sure that that data is updated. And if your project has that product included on the SpecTool, you get a notification from us saying, hey, there's a big refrigerant change, here's the updated model name and number. Or if something's been completely discontinued, I had this morning where there was a faucet. Someone had a really old, out-of-date spec that was just internal to their system. Faucet's been discontinued 3 years ago. If that was on the SpecTool and was part of their master, or if that was a current project, then we would have notified them, hey, this faucet's been discontinued. Either reach out to Zach and I can help you select a new one, or here's our recommendation as an alternate. So that's the way that we try to keep you guys protected, not just in terms of having accurate model name and numbers, accurate data, but also keeping your spec and your master up to date over time. I know this is the time of year everyone's going through their master spec updates. I've had 3 or 4 I'm working on already. So if you have any need to help get your master on the SpecTool, please reach out to myself, Mo, Melanie, Susan, whoever your local ATS person is, and we'll be sure to help you. See if there's any final questions, but I think that's it for me. Here's one for you, Jeremy. For refrigeration mitigation using split A2L units, are you seeing many engineers spec refrigerant sensors or smaller units like 2 or 3 ton models?
So the HVAC manufacturers had the responsibility of including making sure that their products were compliant and rated through the UL as a system. So they are providing the refrigerant mitigation systems. You certainly, it's a good idea for you to write in that they are required to make sure that whoever is speccing this, or whoever is bidding on these projects, knows that it is a requirement. But no, the manufacturers have taken big steps on making sure that they're compliant. You should not, at this point, you should not be running into anyone who's saying that they don't have them or that they're not available. With the exception of Chinese product that can be brought in, and because Canada hasn't, we've adopted the ability to use A2L products, but we haven't mandated it, and we don't usually do that. So you can mandate it, it is a good idea to do it, to say, as part of our spec or as part of our requirements for this building, that we do have refrigerant mitigation systems installed. The other thing I'll mention about that is that unlike the flammable vapor ignition resistant water heaters, these are all automatic reset systems. So if there was a fault and the refrigerant was sensed, it will turn the system back on once the buildup is dissipated. It's not a one-time use only thing like the water heaters, which is great. My only last point is, I've been working with SpecTool, like I said, for a year and a half. There's a lot of projects that we've built on the SpecTool. I know a lot of them are in different stages. So please reach out to your ATS rep, and I can help get involved and recommend and help cross those to the new products and make sure that you're compliant and up to date.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Jeremy, and thank you to those that spent time with us and also submitted your to the First Co poll that we just launched. One of the great pieces of feedback that I just saw is people are looking for webinars specifically on, plumbing mechanical codes, HVAC and building automations, as well as pump sizing and efficiency. And I just saw the look at our upcoming webinar schedule, and I think there's going to be a lot of good things for people. So please keep an eye out for future webinars. We'll be certain to have our certificate attendance out to you guys by the end of the week. You can use that for your self-reporting. If you need the copy of the PDF of the deck, just respond to that email and I'll be sure the team gets out. But most importantly, if you need help getting your master updated or set up on the system, please reach out to our team. We are all making touch points out as much as we can, but if it's something top of mind to you, please reach out to me or anyone on my team, and we'll be sure to help you out. Because that drag and drop, I can't tell you how much time it saved me when we launched that in the last quarter there. It's so nice. I love it. So my favorite new feature and one of my favorite new products to the SpecTool. Thanks for spending time with us again, and we'll be sure to see you all soon. Have a great rest of the day, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye for now.